whole lobby had descended on him and dispensed like street justice.
It certainly encourages us to lean more forward into giving opportunities to have friendly and fun interactions. I think it's an easy idea to reach for. I can put it that way.
After 4 months and 14 million copies sold, sci-fi extraction shooter Ark Raiders continues to draw in almost 6 million players a week across all platforms. Success that's even surprised its own developers, Embark Studios. Ahead of the Shrouded Sky update dropping on February 24th, we sat down with design director Virgil Watkins to discuss the game's unique aggression-based matchmaking, how Embark balances patches with new content, and what the future holds for the game.
Let me jump in with one of the hot topics at the moment, aggression-based matchmaking, which has been a hot topic amongst the community. In hindsight, do you guys regret kind of acknowledging the existence of the system?
Yeah, we have been preparing comms around it, but there's no such thing as a friendly lobby or an aggressive lobby. The system is still mixing everybody, and everything's down to human motivation. Just because you're tending toward the more peaceful end doesn't remove the autonomy from other people making a choice about wanting your stuff. So I think people do feel as though it's incredibly binary, and even shooting one raider one time just automatically puts you into an aggressive lobby, but that's not at all how it works. It waits like, your engagement with PvP is part of the situation, and it's not as though one action does it. It's a series of rounds together and things like that.
I've seen people saying, well, you
All right, so let's unpack what he just said there. He said quite a bit. There's a couple words I want to go over. Weights. That's interesting. So we'll talk about that. He also said binary. The reaction that he's seen from the community is that you're either in friendly. That's what I hear too. You're either in friendly or you're in PvP lobbies. So break that down a little bit. And then he said it's a series of actions. Series of actions. So what does he mean by weights? Well, first we got to understand how this works at a high level. And so think of it as a population, and we have, the number of players over here. Here's our number of players. And then down here, we've got our aggressiveness. So here's our aggressive metric, aggressiveness. How aggressive are the players? So more aggressive, less aggressive, more players, less players. And so what the population probably looks like is one of these curves. So some people are super unaggressive, peaceful, and some people are extremely aggressive, but the majority of players are average aggressiveness. And what the system needs to do is it needs to take the players that are online, so that's this whole under the curve, and it needs to split them into different lobbies. So if we just made, let's just say we had to make 4 lobbies, 1, 2, 3, 4, that wouldn't be even, but you get the idea. So we've got, lobby 1, lobby 2. And the idea is we're doing it in a way where we keep the most similar players along this aggressiveness together. And so we're just assuming it's aggressiveness. They may think of it more like similarity or like-minded, or players that they think should be in the same. The point is they're probably ranking it. So think of this more like rank instead of aggression. But what we've noticed playing the game is that when we are put into lobbies with what they consider to be similar people, it seems like this with PvP players or with PvE players. And so how they do that, and this is where weighting comes in, is they have a table, and in their table they have a metric and a weight value. And so this would be like the number of knocks is the metric that they're going to track, or maybe it's the number of containers that you've looted. And then the weighting is how important it is. So maybe knocks are really important, and that pushes you to the right in the ranking, and containers they've looted, that pushes you to the left. So we'll give it a negative rating. negative weighting. Then there is the actual data. And so that's the same metrics, but there's the actual value. And that's value for an actual player. So let's say the number of knocks for a given player is, 20. And the number of containers that they've looted is 5. And so that all gets multiplied together in an equation that looks like this. R value, or your rank, is equal to the weighting times the data. And so that's, if you multiply these numbers together, then you get a value, and that's where you fall on this curve. And that answers a bunch of these things. So that's the weighting. What he said by binary is that if you're in this lobby right here, you're with players that are in this cohort, and you might be in this lobby over here. And so it's not 2, it's many, many, many lobbies are created from the range of, I'll call it aggressiveness, but your ranking. And so that's where your R value comes from. That's where your ranking comes from. And the last thing you said is series of actions. And really what this value is, it's not 20 equals, your sum total of knocks that that your account has had for the entire lifetime. It's the average for the last number of matches, let's say 5. And so that explains what he's saying, is that it's not binary. It's not one individual thing. There's a series of weights. And so we can only speculate what those weights are that represent the player's behavior around, how likely they are to engage in aggressive behavior. So who knows what that is? Maybe it's more sophisticated than this, but this is the general idea.
If you're shot at, you should never even shoot back if you want to get into the safer end of the spectrum. But I feel like that's not the case.
Yeah, it's not nearly that cut. We never really wanted to apply this mentality of it being a hard split of you either play this way or you do not play this way. The game.
So he's saying what I explained in the chart there. There's not a strict split one or the other, but there is a split for every lobby. And the idea is that you put similar ranked players together. That's how any sort of ranking system works.
Needs that element of tension and risk from other players to be good. And of course we acknowledge that people are having a lot of fun with these safer lobbies, but it's not prescriptive. We're never going to say because you play this way, you're only going to experience these types of people.
So that's really cool. What he's saying is there's this constant request in the community to create a PvE only lobby, a game mode that allows you to only have PvE. And what he's saying is that we're never going to make it a binary decision because, and I'm really glad that he's saying this, because what's beautiful about this game is how unpredictable it is. And every time you go and play, you don't really know what's going to happen. And so if they make a PvE mode, it would ruin what is the most important part of any game, which is the balance of how hard and how easy it is. Imagine a game is just, you click the button, then you win. Are you going to play that game? No. Or if the game's so hard that you will never win, are you going to play that? No. And so what really they're trying to do, and any game developer is trying to do, is make it enjoyable, make it hard enough so it's enjoyable, but not so hard that you don't think you can quote unquote win.
Do you see this as something you're going to continue tweaking and tuning, but you broadly think that it's been a success?
The game, being with the game mode of extraction, carries a lot of inherent elements and expectations with it. And even as we've seen it in live, it is not at all how it was working in our tests, either for ourselves or the previous tests. It was hyper aggressive in those tests. People never worked together. So I think this kind of surprised us in exactly how many people do latch onto and are having fun with these elements of the game. So it certainly encourages us to lean more forward into giving opportunities to have friendly and fun interactions. But yeah, of course, we still need to cater to the PvP audience and make sure that they have like a fun and engaging time as well.
So he's talking about a couple things there with the tests, which is interesting. So at Embark, you have to put in a certain amount of playtime, which I think, I don't know what other studios do, but that's, I think, a pretty cool cultural thing. Even the CEO has to play the game a certain amount of time every week. And so they're really dialed in. But what he's saying is like, when we play, we freaking PvP the crap out of each other. We take each other's stuff. And then if I played the earlier test, like the public test, like the server slam, and that was a lot more, he's saying it was a lot more aggressive than when they actually released the game. So who knows why, but that's what he's talking about there.
And how do you do that then? Because you've done like obviously the shared event at the moment, which kind of like encourages some of that PvE stuff. And how do you keep that PvP very vocal audience who just want to get in there and, you know, they get their kicks maybe somehow from taking your stuff, right?
We just have to primarily make sure that the PvP side of the game is as fair as we can make it. And like, obviously there's still things we need to work out with balance on some factors. We still have the mantra, and this is even regardless of the formation of this PvE heavy audience. The mantra is that the game never asks you to fight other players. That's entirely your own decision.
The game never asks you to fight other players, but you get like creds and you get XP for fighting other players. But yeah, I get the point.
You're always going to have people who have the motivation to fight because there are people who just like PvP and do those things. So I think we need to keep making sure we're providing them with like tools and means to do that in an engaging way. But you're absolutely correct. Like, we have this cohort of players who want to play more peacefully or like role play even, and ensuring that like we don't harm their experience either. So it is a precarious position.
This is a real example. We're all just running around chatting, and one guy did, like you say, did the heel turn and killed someone, and within seconds the whole lobby had descended on him and dispensed like street justice. How do you feel about that kind of emergent gameplay?
Well, I mean, for me, that's actually kind of the hope with all of it is like letting players lead with their own motivations and create all those stories for each other. And that's not something we can ever like author or force to happen. And I'm glad that we don't try. I far prefer that we give players the means and the context and the opportunity to do these things, and then they do what they want to do. And I've even seen videos where people cause that kind of chaos on purpose. Like, they'll have a silenced weapon and watch two people being friendly, and they'll shoot at just the right moment. The guy turns like, "Why'd you do that?" And then they get in a fight, and then a third guy shows up and it punishes the first guy, and then no one knows what's going on anymore. And I think those are some of the better moments you can hope to see.
My take on all this is he's responding in a very subtle way to the biggest ask from the community, which is to create PvE only lobbies. He's saying, no, that's not what makes this game interesting, and we're never going to do that. So I'm glad to hear that.
How much do those post-match surveys play in terms of determining?
Zero factor.
Really? I assumed they would do something.
Those are just to help us gauge how players felt about the round. They have no like mechanical change on what happens to you. It is solely based on your actions in the round.
We're now into kind of midway through the second big expedition. I know you've talked in the past about it being something you wanted to kind of tweak and adapt, and you changed the stash value that was required for the full number of points. But in the longer term, how long do you see that loop of kind of resetting, re-earning blueprints remaining kind of interesting?
It is a bit of an experiment, and because we didn't want to force resets on everyone, then now we're on this road of like, how do we make it interesting enough for the largest amount of people to participate in this? The currency system we have today was just what we had time to develop, and we reduced it, of course, for Expedition 2, just because even though at the time we calibrated the 5 million around what the average player's economy looked like, it's still, I think, overshot in how much people felt like they had to engage with it.
So anyone that's worked in like a corporate job, you can read between the lines here. He's basically saying that we really threw this together and we don't know how to make it work. Otherwise, he would be saying things like, no, we're really proud of that we got X percentage of people to do the expedition. Me, just as a player and wanting them to get this right, I think that's actually a good thing, because you don't want them doubling down on, like, for example, people that I play with, you know, some of them want to do the expedition, some of them don't, and you kind of want everyone doing it so you can all do it together. Anyways, let's see what else he has to say.
Or how much they felt compelled to chase that, which is why we brought it down. But because of other things that were actively in development, we didn't have time to shift the system to what we intend to do next. And we want to tie in essentially more game loops into it and not just make it about the currency value. So ideally, we'll be able to talk about that fairly soon. I wouldn't say there's going to be like major changes in one giant drop, but definitely we're going to try to like adjust and shave off pain points and make sure that, you know, the incentives we are providing, you know, are catching what people find compelling. So like skill points probably won't hold forever. Of course, we don't want people to be able to max out the entire skill tree. That's not the way it's designed. And then of course,
well, that's good to hear, because there's a couple things about the skill tree. First of all, I don't even mess with the skill tree. I think there's a lot of people out there that they've, you know, watched videos and they've come up with, here's what they think the optimal skill tree is, but then they do that a few times and they realize, unlike other games where it's really important to get the right build, it doesn't really have that much impact on your gameplay. There's like 2 or 3 skills, like security breach, that kind of change the game for you. Obviously you need the stamina buffs and there's other things, but there's like complete segments of the tree that are just like no one even uses. So I'd imagine they're probably going to rework the skill tree, and the fact that the main part of the expedition, you know, we've put in 3 million now credits worth of work. That's like your main benefit of putting in all that time. It's weak, and they know it's weak, and so the problem is they don't want you to have an unfair advantage, but at the same time, like he's saying, they're balancing. They need people to do this because the whole balance of the game depends on it. And in other extraction shooters, you're forced to reset. So let's see what else they're saying about this.
Of course, at some point, we're very likely going to revamp parts of the skill tree. So we have to keep it forward on that. So then what other elements do we make part of the expedition system to keep it enticing?
Would you consider allowing people to bring like 1 or 3 blueprints across, almost like as a safe pocket of like, you can just bring these ones?
Yeah, I mean that was an idea we even had before launch about that. And the blueprints in particular are such like a power elevation. Like now you have the autonomy to craft this thing very deliberately. And does that fit in? And then as well, like if we ever make, and as you saw, we have made adjustments to the blueprint drop rates and things like that. So, but I certainly don't think it's off the table. Of course, it's a very rational thing for players to want to do, is like, I work really hard for these and please let me have a few of them. So, yeah, I wouldn't say like no to any idea along those lines. It's mostly about how do you balance what is kind of part of the core run up through progression, and blueprints are a significant part of that, of actually getting them.
You know, you spend.
Me personally, I think you shouldn't be able to keep blueprints, but they should, and they already have made some changes where it's more predictable to get certain blueprints. So I don't know how people feel about that now that there are predictable ways to get certain blueprints.
Years developing Arc Raiders, and it's now the case where you're kind of building up the muscle of running this sort of live service game. What have been the biggest kind of lessons that you've learned so far beyond you know, the need for patch notes to be comprehensive? But what's kind of surprised you that you're like, oh, I didn't expect that?
I mean, I think one thing is the amount of times you have to drop what you're doing and respond to an active issue. So really crazy bug is found, or you get suddenly massive DDoS attacks for 8 hours straight, or a lot of our team like wasn't ready to like drop what they were doing and respond to that. So then you're like, well, I'm working on this new feature and working on this thing, and now I have to respond to this, and that takes up like 2 days of my time to deal with that. So I think that's been a bit of the growing pain, especially at the scale we have now. Like nobody whatsoever thought we'd have this many players. You
know, the most popular streamer of the game, the VTuber Burnt Peanut, was kind of doing this stuff live on stream, tossing nades around. By his own kind of suggestion, he was only doing it against people who were doing it to him, and he wanted to bring it to you guys' attention so that it would be fixed quickly. And I've seen the community completely split between, well, it's good because they fixed it the next day and maybe they wouldn't have if he hadn't have highlighted it, and other people going, well, you can't have it too.
Funny to think that they're just sitting around. Like I said, they play the game just as much, if not more, than the average player. They are looking at all the reactions. You think they need Peanut to tell them there's a bug before they would notice it? That's a little like self-centered, or yeah, he's very popular, but that's a little ridiculous.
Justice system, he should be banned with everyone else. Like, where are you on kind of how you handle that sort of thing?
All I can say with this issue in particular was more coincidence. We already had a fix ready to go for it when it kind of exploded. But of course, like, you know, you'll have things come to your attention in a very loud way through some channels, and then it becomes hard to gauge, you know, the level at which it's being used. So I don't feel as though there's a two-lane thing. Like, we respond to stuff the moment we know about it. It just takes time to patch certain issues compared to others.
Obviously, in this same like service game space, some very high-profile failures.
Notice he didn't say anything about banning Peanut for abusing the exploit.
Yes, as well, like we saw Concord kind of flame out, and then Highguard obviously making layoffs. Do you kind of like imagine a world in which, you know, if you had one bad trailer, like, or one trailer that was received badly, like as the kind of final moment of the game, or was that could have been your future? Do you consider like that's the kind of tightrope that these kind of games are on at the moment? I
think we were fortunate in that we'd been building the game for so long, and like it was already fun for us, and we were just hoping that translated. And I think in some of these situations where you might see a piece of media and then it's hard for you to gauge what actually.
It's so funny how the interviewer's like, do you think if you would have had one bad trailer, then your whole studio would have imploded? And his answer is like, we play the games and they're fun, and so we think other people will have fun playing. It's like such a weird, it's so weird how disassociated these PC gamer IGN people are from. It's like, just play the game, and if it's fun, it's fun. Like, what does the trailer have to do with anything? People watch all the trailers and they buy based on the ratings. They don't buy based on, well, at least that's what I do. You know, people recommended this game to me. That's why I'm playing it. They didn't see the trailer and say, oh, this looks good. I actually played it.
Having your hands on it is like, puts you in a bit of a position. Like, and then we because we've been doing tests, and like Tech Test 2 for us was obviously a pivotal moment where we really got huge amounts of player response. So I think that helped us calibrate where we went with a lot of like real public data to an extent. But certainly I think it's hard when you can't manage expectations through those things. We've even seen that, like even around Tech Test 2, we had the whole countdown to a countdown thing. No one really intended for that. We're just like, ooh, everyone's excited, so are we. Let's count down to something. And of course, the narrative around Shadow Drop popped up, and we didn't jump on that quickly enough. And then obviously everyone's very disappointed that they couldn't play the game right there and then. I don't envy those positions for sure.
Do you think Ark being a paid game actually probably did it a service, because players then, you kind of had to commit to it, right? It wasn't like they just played 2 rounds and went, no, it's not for me, and kind of dipped out. They were kind of like on board with it because they'd spent the $40 maybe.
Yeah, I have to imagine so. I mean, just using my own gamer brain, that's how I tend to feel about stuff. You know, I do a bit more research into it. I'll watch content creators or reviews.
Yeah, me personally, it's like, if they have to give the game away, what does that say about the game? I just feel free-to-play games are usually worse. My biased judgment.
That I feel like I align with, like how they feel about stuff, and then when I make the purchase, I feel like I'm generally more informed than as opposed to like free-to-play games where I'll just give it a go because, oh, it's kind of interesting, but yeah, you lack that sort of personal investment. So I think that definitely did us some favors, and it's part of the reason why we changed back then from free-to-play to paid, because then we felt like we could build a product that was more.
Could you imagine if Ark Raiders was free-to-play? It has a certain level of toxic player base right now. Imagine how toxic people would be if they could just instantly create another account.
Going back to Ark's kind of PvE side about the Matriarch and the Queen boss fights, I love them. I think they're spectacular. They're like almost nothing else I've done in gaming. They're closest almost to like raid bosses in something like Destiny. But I've seen a lot of frustration from players about how the kind of like loot is portioned out. And I know you changed the drop rate of the cores in the legs, but having so much of the loot in that central orb, it often feels like the boss dies and almost no one gets anything. Are there kind of changes maybe coming to those encounters?
I mean, yeah, we keep evaluating how it's going, but those things, even though they're like huge and deadly, they're not intended for like the full server to go up against and get equally rewarded. It is meant to be like, you know, a couple of dedicated squads maybe working together while also dealing with other players.
That's how it was in the server slam. It was very rare that people would like shoot at the queen, but now you have so little to lose. And in the combination of how easy it is to get into a friendly lobby, how easy it is to get a bunch of loot and go get enough stuff to go fight the queen, you see, if you join a match with the queen, it's like dead in 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or the matriarch. I even made a video about this. The meta is to go and shoot the leg pieces off and just grab a core and run. And everyone is slowly realizing that. And so it's much more competitive now than it used to be. And the fact that what he's referring to is like the main core drops when the queen explodes or the matriarch explodes, but it only has like 3 to 5 core reactors in it. They need to rethink this a little bit and realize that the matchmaking system that they have is making it so people are all fighting it together. And they're reviving people too, which I'm not sure why people do that, but it's actually pretty cool. People don't share the loot though.
It's a factor that they have to manage.
That's not how they're being played though, I don't think.
I mean, it is pretty mixed. Then you get the players who do end up in the slightly friendlier lobbies. You do get like everybody working together, and then there's that moment like, okay, does everyone just fight it out now over what loot there is, or is the whole thing?
That never happens. It's either you don't even kill the queen because it's so PvP heavy and people are just shooting on sight, or everyone works together, they kill the queen, everyone leaves together, but there's not like a point where everyone like turns and starts shooting at each other. Sometimes there's a single rat who takes loot that they clearly didn't earn, and then people gang up and kill that person, or there's one murder, but that's really no different than any of the other behavior in like a PvE lobby.
PvP bloodbath the whole time, so it's pretty spread for how people are actually engaging with it.
All right, I'm going to cut it there because this is turning into a longer video than I planned for. But if you want to watch the entire PC Mag interview, I will include the link in the description. And I will see you all in the next video.